It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am your host this morning. And somebody asked me the other day, why do you call the show America's Voice? Because every other mainstream media organization out there is not. The truth is, America, we're in big trouble, boy, and somebody better speak up for the average American out there, because the lobbyists are buying and selling Congress for their own benefit. Nobody is really speaking out for us. I want to thank those folks that are joining us live on our website at americasvoicenow.org. I see a whole bunch of you out there this morning. My gracious, there's a ton of you. I see Baltimore out there, and let's see, that's Delton, and I think that is Fort Wayne. Lincoln, Nebraska. I see Summersville. I see Scurry, Huntington. Those are all Texas areas. A bunch of stuff out on the West Coast. Thanks for joining with us. If you have not yet made your the Constitution Club or Patriot FB a part of your daily life, I strongly encourage you to do that. Get away from Facebook, which is censoring you and monitoring you, and find yourself some alternative social media to participate with. The Constitution Club can be found by going to constitutionclub.ning.com or .org. I'm not sure which, but you'll find it. The other is Patriot FB, Patriot Foxtrot Bravo, or Patriot Facebook. The idea of both of these sites is that you will have an opportunity to communicate with others who are like-minded, and you will not have censorship. And in addition to that, Constitution Club has a really unique program, which is that they have a special little micro website, if you will, for every one of the 3,300, roughly 3,300 counties in the United States. So the cool part of that is that you get an opportunity to meet with other people who are like-minded, but also close to you. So you don't have to go and work hard to find them. That is a great feature, and I cannot encourage you enough to participate in that. You will have an opportunity to interact with them on Constitution Club by joining up that local county resource, or if you live on a border, maybe 2 neighboring counties, and find some folks that you can participate with politically, from a prepper perspective, from a training perspective. Maybe somebody in the area knows of a great co-op that you can buy food, collectively from. Things like that. And so, by all means, do that. Get over to Patriot FB, where America's Voice Now broadcasts every morning. And right after I'm on, you've got a couple of other great programs on there, including Tom Lacavara's program. And I cannot encourage you enough to be a part of that, because Patriot FB, Resurrect the Republic, and J.J. McCartney is on from 2 to 4 Central. And J.J. is, the guy has got 30-some-odd years in the radio industry, and it shows. He is a true professional. I'm just a hack, regular guy who got sick and tired of waiting for everybody else to come forth and say what needed to be said, right? State the obvious. JJ has a unique slant and a unique way of putting it, and I encourage you to catch his show. You can find that on Patriot FB Radio, and you can go to simply go to patriotfb.com, and you'll get all the details. We're going to cover a couple of different topics this morning. Our normal process is to cover, 4 different areas or topics, but we're going to try to give you a quick news update on some of the other things that are happening too, because the information that's out there, and the news is laden with all kinds of articles and stories that are worthwhile reading for those of you that are politically awake and aware. Yesterday was tax day. We all got our butts handed to us. Just a quick little factoid for you, but in 1916, when the 16th Amendment and income tax were passed, it's interesting to note that the average tax rate was 6%. 6. In the last year, America has seen a 1.8% increase in taxes. Everybody. So in the last year, we went up a third of what the original tax rate was. Hello? If you want to know how government has grown so big, look at how much money they're collecting and look at how much they're taking from you. It's a problem. It's a problem. That's why I have consistently thrown out there the phrase that you must starve the beast. If we're going to free this nation of an oligarchy, a tyrannical oligarchy and a small group of officials who, for all intents and purposes, consider you to be their human resource, then you need to starve them out, because the only way that they can continue to abscond power is by your money, quite frankly. They're buying their power with your money. Hello? All right, our 4 topics this morning. NSA monitors Wi-Fi on U.S. aircraft. Now, guys, I got to tell you, this nonsense with the NSA, you know, I guess I'm questioning why corporate America is not standing up and screaming bloody murder. Because the number of people that fly in the United States is, in large part, corporate business people who are flying to and from meetings and what have you. The NSA is capturing and gaining access to your computer and monitoring what you're sending on Wi-Fi. If they can monitor what you're sending and receiving and look at your email, they can also look at the content of your hard drive. And if they can do that, then I got to ask the obvious question. Why isn't corporate America up in arms? Because all of their trade secrets, all of their new plan, all of their new product planning, all of their marketing plans, all of their corporate intelligence, all of their financials, all of their proprietary information, it's all there in those laptops of their executives and their higher echelon people who are flying around the country. So that stuff is then falling into the hands of who? Somebody at the NSA or the FBI, and who knows who it's then distributed to. Should raise a question in every corporate executive team's collective mind. Why are they not speaking out? I mean, you know, not only would it help them, of course, it would inadvertently help us. I don't think they really care one way or the other about us, but it would help us if they spoke out. And so if you work for a large corporation, if your executives in your company travel, I would encourage you to get, you know, the mug for putting into the suggestion box the comment that perhaps it's time that corporate America or your company's executive team looked at security from the standpoint of their traveling public or their traveling employees. Big question. Second topic this morning is going to be about Virginia, and an interesting article that's out from Watchdog.org about a woman, who, Catherine Watson, who's a reporter there, and she went out and did a request to find out what the local police had on her, just as an investigative reporter issue. What she found was astounding, and we're going to go over it. Our third topic, tax facts and absurdities. Well, because yesterday was the big day for the federal government and your state governments, we're going to talk about some of the issues surrounding who's paying what and some of the absurdities associated with it. By the way, as a way of an update, I brought out yesterday that the IRS has been collecting debt from individuals based on your parents' and your grandparents' debt that may have been incurred by them from Social Security, an overpayment, what have you. Yesterday, and I'm not going to be like Bill O'Reilly and take credit for everything that happens, but yesterday the IRS put a temporary halt to that program, and even they recognized it as absurd. I'm sure there was a lot that had a lot to do with public pressure, but and political pressure, of course. Don't forget, this is an election year, right? So, and then our fourth and final topic will be the Ukraine and the Obama foreign policy, or the lack thereof, perhaps, is the way we should phrase it. Because at this stage, folks, you got to recognize that we are in big trouble as a country. We're in big trouble in a number of areas, but the area of foreign policy is particularly sensitive. And I say that because a lot of Americans kind of, they gloss over when you talk about foreign policy. Oh, the Middle East thing, we've been at that for decades now. Generations we've been trying to settle that strife. The issue of Iraq, the issue of Afghanistan, the issue of Iran, the issue of Syria, the issue of the Ukraine, the issue of Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Russia, South America, Africa. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm not quite sure everybody understands exactly how much it affects us, or how much the lack of foreign policy and the failed foreign policy out there has really, truly affected us. So let's jump into our first topic because we're running short on time. I'm blabbing away here. By the way, a quick update. Rory Reid came out yesterday and said rancher Cliven Bundy should be prosecuted. And I'm thinking, wow, now that's interesting. Here you have Al Capone, the Al Capone of Nevada, turning around and saying that, a member of the public should be arrested and prosecuted for things which he himself is by far more guilty of. It's interesting, he said, we believe in a country in which we are subject to laws, and they can't just ignore the laws we don't like. I think clearly if state and local prosecutors look at this more closely, they're going to find that he broke the law and he should be prosecuted. He went on to say he is not a victim and he's not a hero. He's been using that which he doesn't own for over 20 years, and he didn't pay. He broke the law. There are hundreds of ranchers throughout Nevada that conduct their profession honorably. There's thousands of them throughout the country, and when they have a dispute with the BLM, they try to work it out. Well, for the record, let me just throw out there that Bundy has tried to work it out, but he's been in front of a corrupt court that is siding with the BLM because, here it is, you're going to the bully's brother and complaining about the bully. And how do you think he's going to find? Duh. I think Rory Reid should be prosecuted for there's a lot of things he should be prosecuted for, not the least of which is all the dirty real estate deals he does on behalf of his piece of crap father. But what he really should be prosecuted in this case for is undermining U.S. sovereignty and betraying the people of the state of Nevada. Rory Reid is a shadow figure working on behalf of his father. And of course, every one of the Reid sons has enriched himself at the expense of taxpayers. So I really don't think they're in any position to talk. All right, the NSA is monitoring Wi-Fi on U.S. airplanes, in violation, by the way, of privacy laws. Gee whiz, you're kidding. Really? No, everything they do is a violation of USA privacy laws. Not the privacy laws that are on the books. Those privacy laws, are written by politicians with loopholes in mind so that they can work around them. The real privacy law is this thing called the Fourth Amendment, okay? And the real privacy law is this thing called the First Amendment. Companies that are providing Wi-Fi on U.S. domestic flights are handing the data over to the NSA willingly. They're adapting their technology on purpose to allow security services like the NSA and the FBI to have new powers to spy on their passengers. Now, there's a problem with that. And this came out of Wired magazine, by the way, and GoGo. And Wired leaked to Wired. GoGo which is the leading provider of in-flight Wi-Fi, admitted to violating the requirements of the Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act, or what's called CALEA. The act is part of a wiretapping law passed in 1994 that requires telecommunications carriers to provide law enforcement with a backdoor into their systems to monitor telephone and broadband communications. GoGo stated in the letter to the FCC that it added new capabilities to the service that go beyond CALEA's requirements at the behest of law enforcement agencies. So what you've got here is the NSA and the FBI and the DHS going to these corporations that run these services and saying, look, we want you to give us expanded capability that's above and beyond what the law requires. And they're like, oh, okay, sure, no sweat. Why? I mean, first and foremost, why would they do that? Is that not a violation of your privacy for them to do that? And that doesn't, it's not limited, by the way, just to GoGo and other in-flight networks. How about Google and AOL? And all of the other, Yahoo and all the other data networks out there. It's just absurd. GoGo's attorney wrote, in designing its existing network, GoGo worked closely with law enforcement to incorporate functionalities and protections that would serve public safety and national security interests. He refused to elaborate on the nature of the changes. But he said they worked with, quote, federal agencies to reach an agreement regarding a set of additional capabilities to accommodate law enforcement interests. So let's just take that for a moment and put it into the perspective and the concept of corporate America. For those of you that work for corporations, large and small, you know that there is IP. What is IP? It's called intellectual property. And this is proprietary information that the corporation believes is the technological basis for its products and its services and its intellectual property that the corporation regards as trade secret, right? They don't want the competition to know that they've just produced and created a new product and they're getting ready to launch it because they can be beat to market, as an example, with it. In addition to that, they may be currently applying for a patent for a new invention they've manufactured or created, right? And before the patent application is submitted, that information is sitting on some executive's laptop where he's flying out to maybe meet with the person who or the company that is actually, producing the widget or the new invention so that they can get the final plans together to submit for a patent. Well, guess what? Before they ever actually get to the point where they can get to the patent office with the application, what happens? Somebody in the NSA or the FBI gets that information, and wouldn't it be convenient if his cousin or his brother-in-law or his sister-in-law worked for one of the competitors, and he silently slipped that information to them? Not possible, you say? Bunk. The NSA has been consistently, and not just NSA, but law enforcement across the country in both state, federal, and fusion centers have been caught misusing their authority in the sense that they look up ex-girlfriends to see who they're currently dating. They look up future girlfriends. They have misused the data for all manner of things. What would make you think they wouldn't use it for something that might be worth, to a competitor as an example, literally millions of dollars? Question marks, anyone? Why is corporate America completely and totally closed to raising this issue? Why are they not? This article here is interesting because it continues to expound on the Electronic Frontier Foundation and their comments to Wired Magazine about how having ISPs now that say that CALEA isn't enough, we're going to be even more intrusive in what we collect on people, is honestly very scandalous. And it's a fairly there's some other paragraphs you want to catch on it. My point is simply this: does a corporation that offers you service have an obligation to offer some level of protection for you? I mean, you are paying for it after all, most of the time. And even if you're not, if they offer it as in a gratuitous manner, as an amenity, as part of your flight services or whatever else, you are entitled to a certain level of deference. Your privacy. You're the corporation who's spending the vast majority of the money that airlines make. Are you not entitled to some deference for that? Why would a corporation bend over backwards and put in capabilities that go above and beyond what the law requires, which means anything that the law requires that's above and beyond, or anything that's above and beyond what the law requires, would be what? That would be a violation of your privacy. Not that, and I mean, look, I'm just taking it on the face of what they classify to be the law. Personally, I think their laws are unconstitutional, null and void in the first place because they already exceed the constitutional authorization that government has been given. But even if we take it from their perspective and actually buy into their argument that they can create a law that has a threshold here, anything that's done here and above would be in a greater violation of your privacy because the law is the base threshold, the maximum that they can do. Remember that law and the Constitution as a general whole are not intended to rule you. They're intended to limit government. Bind men down with the chains of a constitution. Right? Or wrong? I mean, wasn't that the original intent, that the Constitution was really there to make sure that individuals would not allow their personal whims, their personal ability to improve their lot in life, whether that be financial or political or power or whatever, to be used in their position of authority, to allow them to abuse that position of authority, to gain something. That was the whole point, folks. And human nature tells us that it will happen. In fact, it happens to everyone because power corrupts, period. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle our second topic. This is a very, very interesting one. Do not miss this topic. License plate cameras are tracking you everywhere. Now, I talked about this the other day about Missouri's scamra, that's the red light camera scam that they've been running, and how we're trying to get that knocked out here in the in Missouri. But beyond that, I'm going to talk to you about a woman who works with and writes for watchdog.org in their Virginia bureau. And she did an interesting test to see exactly what the story was and what they know about her. So make sure that you don't miss this because it's very, very interesting how much information they're collecting on just the average citizen. What I want you to think to yourself, and I want you to ask yourself, is one question. If they're gathering all of this information, here's the simple question. Is there any one positive thing that I can point to in my personal life that will come from the government's tracking of all of my activities? Ask yourself that question. You can find us live at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/americasvoicenow. And you can find every program that we do posted up on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/americasvoicenow. Basically, remember, America's Voice Now, strung together, and you can find us everywhere. We'll be back in just a second. Returning. All right. This should be a very, very interesting segment because think about the advent of what our surveillance state looks like today and the capabilities therein. And then think about how that would have advantaged someone like a Stalin or a Mao or, an Adolf Hitler or Mussolini or Pol Pot or any you can pick any tyrant, Chavez. Think about how they would have been able to much more rapidly identify those people that they perceived or construed to be an enemy of their regime. And how easy it would be to not only identify who they are, but know how to go about grabbing them and capturing them and, whatever. Well, don't tell me it didn't happen because, all of those men that I mentioned are well known for killing well over, 150, 200 million people. Right? So you can't tell me it doesn't happen, that tyrants don't purge their political enemies. Of course they do. And there's an article out in watchdog.org, which is a great organization, by the way. If you're not a follower of watchdog.org, you should be. But it's also out in the Daily Caller, and let's just run over them real quick. Here's the question you want to ask yourself. If everything that I do is an open book to everyone or any portion of the government that chooses to know and track everything that I do, everything I see, everything I read, every person I talk to, every communication I have, everywhere I go, every place I stop and visit, is there one thing that I can point to as an individual that will make me say, I will get a benefit from this? There will be some benefit that will come from my government tracking everything that I do. I've had an open running bet before Snowden's revelations began with my audience, you, that I will give $100 to anybody who can give me one well-thought-out, well-reasoned, honest and truthful, and of course it has to be real, benefit that they will gain by government having all of this information about all your activities. Everything about your finances, everything about where you shop, how much you spent, how did you buy it, what credit card did you use an ATM card, did you buy in cash? What books are you taking out of the library? What do you read? What kind of television programming do you watch? Do you watch news? Do you not watch news? Where do you go? Where does your vehicle take you? Do you travel a lot, or are you kind of a town body? Do you stay pretty much in town? Do you live in a major city? And if so, where are the places where you frequent and haunt? How often do you go there? Who do you talk to on the phone? And how often? Are these long conversations or relatively brief ones? Are they the same people consistently, or do you speak to a lot of various people? How about your work life? Where do you work? What do you do? Are you the kind of person that stays in an office all day long? Or do you work in a factory or in a warehouse? Or do you travel for work? And how do you travel? And when you're traveling, whom do you come in contact with? And who do those people come in contact with? Who within your circle of influence, your people that you communicate with at work, at church, at school, at business, who within that organization or circle of influence, who do they communicate with? Let's take it out one ring. And then let's take that out a second ring and find out those people that you communicate with, who do they communicate with? I've given you the statistics that there was a study done not so long ago that within an hour, using public databases available on the internet, with your call information, just your call metadata, which the government openly agrees it's taking, that 80% of the people, based on the phone calls that they're making and so forth and so on, can be identified. So the government's argument that, we're not listening to your individual phone calls, you're all just paranoid delusionists, is not true. By the way, I got to take to task Bill O'Reilly on this thing, because he had a conversation yesterday with the liberal and the conservative girl, and I can't think of their names now. Alan Combs and Monica Crowley. And he had a conversation yesterday, and you can probably find it on Fox News' website or O'Reilly.com or whatever, where they were talking about issues of privacy. And he was calling Crowley a paranoid delusionist. I personally, for some reason, O'Reilly is getting further and further and further and further away from constitutional principles. And I see it all the time. It's been happening a lot of late. And, I mean, some of the things he comes up with and announces as if, he's got the fiat authority to make these things so. I get it. He's very popular, and I'm not taking that away from him. But I have to be honest. If that's what America is buying into, then that's a real serious problem. We are entitled to our privacy. Now, in Virginia, the cops are constantly photographing random people's license plates. This is an article out of the Daily Caller, which is up on our website at americasvoicenow.org, Facebook page, Patriot FB page, blah, blah, blah. And this article that was written by Catherine Watson from watchdog.org is excellent. Here's the title of the article. Who's watching me? Police took photos of my license plates. The police know exactly where my car has been and when during the past few months. They could have the same information or more about you. As part of my series on the use of automatic license plate readers in Virginia, I wanted to find out what kind of information local police might have. By law, the only information I'm privileged to obtain is my own. Last week, I filed a public record request with the Alexandria Police Department. I've lived in the lovely city of Alexandria for just 2 years, and my driving record, aside from the occasional parking ticket, is virtually spotless. What I found, however, left me riveted. In all, police captured 16 photos of my car, mostly at night, and recorded my license plate 8 times on 5 different dates, from October 2013 to as recently as April 1st. In January, the license plate reader captured my plate twice while my car was parked in the lot of my apartment complex, according to latitude and longitudinal records. Police also captured records of my car as I drove to a Bible study on a typical Wednesday night in March. Still others were captured in various spots around Old Town Alexandria. Per the Alexandria Police Department policy, LPR, which is license plate reader, LPR-generated data may be kept on a computer for up to 30 days, pending an upload to an LPR database. There, information can be kept for up to 6 additional months, according to Crystal Nosel, the commander and senior public information officer for the Alexandria Police Department. Police Chief Earl Cook ratcheted down that storage policy from 4 years to 2, and then from 2 years to 6 months. So they used to be able to keep it for up to 4 years. Alexandria police have 13 of these mobile systems, which are mounted only on police vehicles. The state's highest constitutional office has already said that random collection and storage isn't legal, but many local police departments in Virginia continue to do it. Last year, then Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli concluded in an official opinion that, quote, data collected in the continuous, passive manner that is not properly defined as criminal intelligence information and not otherwise relating directly to law enforcement investigations and intelligence gathering respecting criminal activity may not be lawfully collected through the use of license plate reader technology. Notice how many loopholes there are? Hello? Because it depends on what you call criminal activity. Is parking illegally criminal activity? Is being in a bad neighborhood criminal activity? I don't know, So there's just loopholes big enough for you to drive a tractor trailer through. Police say that Alexandria license plate reader technology helps police identify and catch criminals in ways other approaches simply can't. This is always the argument we hear, folks, that it's really not about your privacy. It's about finding the needle in a haystack, that one criminal And it's okay if we violate the rights of tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of you in an effort to accomplish that. I don't buy it. I disagree. 100%. Crime has always occurred. We're never going to have a crime-free society. And we're never going to have a crime-free society when everything that you do is actually a crime these days. I mean, let's be candid. How many of the crimes that are currently on the books are real crime? Very few. In January, Alexandria police, guided by the Alexandria license plate reader gathered data, were able to apprehend the suspected robber of a U.S. Postal Service office. Quote, LPR has been a successful tool in identifying leads in lots of cases from homicide to larceny. There is not one specific crime type, said Nosel, mentioning that records can be used to find parking violators too. See, that's what it's really all about, monetary revenue streams. Recovering stolen automobiles and detecting parking violations are probably the best examples. However, we do not maintain statistical data on when LPR was used as a tool, since it is merely a pointer system. End quote. That kind of success doesn't happen every day. A study of Maryland's use of the technology found that for every 1 million license plates scanned, only 47 were connected with serious crimes, according to the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU of Virginia is encouraging people to file a record request with their own police departments. The top-of-the-line Alexandria license plate reader technology allows local police departments like Alexandria's to capture up to 1,800 license plates per minute, even on cars going up to 160 miles an hour. Police can check license plate data to match one vehicle's moves or against things such as Department of Motor Vehicle records. That's exactly why civil rights advocates such as John Whitehead, the president of the Rutherford Institute in Charlottesville, said that the widespread collection and preservation of license data not only potentially violates search and seizure rights in the Fourth Amendment, but it also makes people leery to exercise their First Amendment right. In 2008 and 2009, the Virginia State Police, which now regularly expunges records but still collects them, license plate records obviously, captured license plate data of people at political rallies for Sarah Palin and Barack Obama. It could be used against you, said Mr. Whitehead earlier this month. After writing this, I'll be sure to keep a closer eye on my surroundings. All it would take is a quick search of the records to find out where I live and where I typically travel. Catherine Watson is an investigative reporter for Watchdog.org, and I've sent her an email asking her for some more information and background on this particular story. And in addition to that, I'd like to see the form that she used. Because what I think we should all do, and this delves to the monkey wrench, sand in the gears concept, is that every citizen should be submitting a records request, essentially what she did, to find out what kind of information local, state, and federal agencies, law enforcement, and other entities, and agencies across the spectrum, have on you. First of all, the advantage to that is multifold. For those of you that are on the fence about whether or not big government is good or bad for you, finding out exactly how extensive your personal file is may help you to grasp the idea that perhaps all is not well in Kansas. In other words, things aren't quite as rosy as you thought when you find out just how much data they have on you. Secondarily, I do believe that there's some advantage to the concept that by submitting all these requests, you're tying them up and making them do an enormous amount of paperwork. It's the paper snowstorm, right? This is the same kind of snowstorm that lawyers use to bog down cases for years. But think about it. If 100 million Americans went out there and filed a request for all of the information contained on you by your motor vehicle records, your local police department, your local county sheriff. Then in addition to that, your state police. Then in addition to that, your state government, like it depends on what you do and what you do for work and whether you own property or whatever. But you get the idea. Then, in addition to that, the federal databases, the FBI database, the NSA database. Now, I grant you, some of these are going to come back responded to with, we don't give any information out. The NSA is going to tell you, it's none of your business what we have on you, which ought to raise a flag right off the bat. And maybe, just maybe, that will trigger it. But here's the point. If you're a believer already in the fact that we live in a police state, an Orwellian police state, then here's the benefit. You have been involved many, many times as a leader, a community leader, a circle of influence leader, with many people in your circle of influence who you've tried to talk to about what's going on around us. And many times you're met with the glazed over look, the deer in the headlights, the skeptical face, the sarcasm, the insults, the, come on, you're just being paranoid stuff. Okay, great. Here's a tool that will bring it home to you or anyone else. Get your records and then be prepared to show them to those people in your circle of influence who are doubters. I'm only one person. What can I do? I'm giving you a handle right here, right now. You can gather your own personal information by submitting requests to find out what information all these entities have on you. Then you can compile all of that information, and when you have a discussion with someone, you don't have to show them the most intimate details of your personal life that the government has on you, but you can certainly say, well, look, I went out and I submitted these 8 requests, and here's all the information I got back, and it's it's 3 pages or it's 333 pages. Why is it that they know where my car is going? Doesn't that frighten you? The idea of having empirical evidence in your hand eliminates all of the questions and the doubts and the naysayers and all of the arguments that people would ordinarily put forth to say, come on, you're a paranoid delusionist. Get your tinfoil hat off and let's go have a beer. You see, time will tell, of course, but by then it'll be too late. What we need to be doing as American patriots and as partisans in the war on terror. This is our war against government-sponsored terrorism. We should be acting affirmatively to have the tools at our disposal to do the one thing that right now we can do, which is educate, inform, motivate, and activate those within our circle of influence. Your circle of influence is not only those people who agree with you. Your circle of influence is everyone that you come in contact with, whether it be at work, at school, from a job perspective that touches your business, that you communicate with as friends, that are neighbors in your community, whatever. Members of civic organizations that you're a member with as well. Any one of these areas touch a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that you have contact with that if you only had empirical evidence that was narrow enough for you to say, look, this isn't some kind of statistics that some organization or whatever created and then manipulated the numbers to make it look like something. This is my data. I didn't fake it, and they actually have it. And look what I found they have about me, where my car goes. Why do they care what church I'm visiting on a Wednesday night for what prayer meeting? And doesn't that concern you that your government knows? I mean, so let's assume, for argument's sake, that there's a crime of some sort that occurs in your community. Does that mean that they go back into the database and they say, okay, let's get every car that went by that crime scene for an hour before and an hour afterwards and pull every plate and investigate every person? You know, the idea of all of these things, this is why facial recognition and DNA and retinal scans and all this stuff is so abhorrent to people who are liberty-minded. Because the information will inevitably be used against you, not to your benefit. That's why I ask you the question, and I want you to ask yourself, is there any one positive thing that I can point to in my personal life? Any one positive thing that will come from the government tracking all of my activities? Is there any one thing that you can find from any of that? I want you to do that question and ask that question of yourself. I think if you sit down and you're honest about it, you're going to answer no. I mean, where you frequent, what businesses you go to, where you spend your money, what kind of materials you read, what you watch on television, what you do for entertainment. Listen, that's really not the government's business. They've already got a tracking device that they attach to your hip, that you willingly attach to your hip, by the way. So there's so much data about you. I want you to play an active role. Your job is to educate, inform, motivate, and activate those within your circle of influence, no matter how slightly you touch them. And I guarantee you that you can change hearts and minds by standing there and saying, this file that I have is what the government has compiled on me, that I'm aware of, that they'll even give me. And if I found this much, imagine how much more they really have that they won't tell me about. Now, shouldn't that concern you? And have the arguments ready to say, if you disagree and you're still not concerned, let me explain to you why you should be. You don't have to be a great orator. You don't have to be a writer. You don't have to be a minister. You're a leader. Lead. Yes, it's going to take some work on your part. You're going to have to, actually sit down and write the letters but make it a form letter. I don't care. When I have it, I'm going to put one together that will be a request, a Freedom of Information Act request that you can submit to every government agency, your local police department, your local sheriff's office, your local county, and your state police department, and any agency that you deal with, the Department of Natural Resources in the course of your business and things like that. Be a great opportunity for you to identify, what do they know about you? What do they have on you? I think it's a worthwhile exercise, and I think you should do it. I will. I already know they got reams of data on me, I'm sure. But I'd like to see if they're tracking my particular license plate. I mean, I don't really care. I know they are. But, the truth is, I want you to know how much they've got on you, because that's what really matters. And I believe it will be an extraordinarily valuable tool. It can be, in your hands, a weapon. A weapon to resist and fight back. A way to throw sand in the gears. A way to monkey wrench what the government is doing to us. Right now, all we can do is gather those who are aware and awake. Participate with us, and you can help us accomplish that. We're going to take a break for commercials right now. This is a network where we're on live radio, and we have to pay the bills. And so stick with us. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we are going to tackle our third topic this morning, which is tax facts and absurdities, based on the fact that yesterday was perhaps the worst day of the year for many Americans. And we'll come back and touch on that. I'm just going to read a couple of local commercials. We'll be back in just a moment. If you have an opportunity, please make sure that you patronize our sponsors locally here, because these are guys that and gals and businesses that really put forth the effort to support America's Voice Now on this radio program so that you have information given to you every day. I'm going to start out with our friends over at Law Offices of Jason Henry. Jason is a great attorney. He does a lot of cases, both civil and criminal. He handles state and federal cases. He specializes in firearms cases. He also handles stuff like local divorces and child custody matters. He handles DUIs and things like that. And also some information related to automobile accidents and stuff like that. Please make sure to give him a call. If you've got need for legal services in your life, give him a call, 417-256-4100. He's located in West Plains. It's 417-256-4100. It's the Law Offices of Jason Henry. While you're on the square, swing by at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop. Get yourself a great cigar or a pipe or pipe tobacco, any kind of accessory that you want for smoking. You can call them if you like. They mail out stuff, and they also have a room there where you can do parties. So if you've got an upcoming wedding and you wanted to do a bachelor party, perfect place for that. Even a bachelorette party. 417-257-1776. Great way to reach those folks. And make sure that you ask them and let them know that you've heard about them here on America's Voice Now. We're going to return in just a moment. We'll be back And stick with us. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right, America. Good morning. We're back. You're joining us here on America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am the host here, and you're joining us in the third of four segments. This morning, we've covered a couple of other areas and topics that were current in the news. Our job here is to basically expose the Ministry of Propaganda. I'm sorry, the mainstream media. What was I thinking? The Ministry of Propaganda exposes you every day to manipulation, mind-altering, behavioral monitoring, and behavioral directing information. Their goal is to get you to toe the line. Their goal is to indoctrinate you. Our goal is to enlighten you, to wake you up, and help you recognize from mainstream media's annals and archives that what they're not telling you is in many cases more important than what they are telling you. We go out and dig out stories all over the place. I do this every morning. I find those articles that I think are of value. Some are informative. Some I put out there just so that you'll read them and exercise your critical thinking skills. What are those skills? Critical thinking skills are those that enable you to analyze and evaluate information that's contrary to your predisposed bias or ideas and opinions. Most people form opinions based upon other people's opinions that they've adopted, right? And they parrot them. It's like a little parrot on your shoulder. Bip, 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 bip. Your goal, your job, if you truly want to be a critical thinker, is to look at information objectively. And objectively means that you have to read and educate yourself and study that information, which is not necessarily in agreement with your predisposed positions. Sometimes you actually have to see or hear or read those opinions which you are diametrically opposed to. A couple of reasons that that's beneficial to you. One, it challenges what you do believe, and it ensures that you believe it for the right reasons. Two, you may find some information upon which you agree with those people that you would ordinarily consider yourself in opposition to. Three, it also gives you the capability and the wherewithal to be able to understand how they're approaching something and how they're thinking, so that as you are exercising your leadership skills within your circle of influence that's around you every day, you have an opportunity to understand better where they're coming from. It gives you an opportunity to see the chinks in their armor, because here you are listening to their arguments. Critical thinking is a lost art in America, and in large part because of lamestream media. The Ministry of Propaganda is run by 6 corporations that basically run all the media that you hear and see, written and audio and video. All the news organizations, and by the way, there are 6 right now, but Time Warner and Comcast have submitted for a merger. So it's actually going to get narrowed down to 5. Hello. The truth is, you need alternative media and critical thinking skills to help you walk the path, not of least resistance, but that's going to get you from point A to point B. The truth is, most of America is completely apathetic, either willfully or just because they're hapless. Most of America is apathetic about what's going on around us. And I've got to tell you, they are in for a rude awakening. But the situationally aware individual who's exercising critical thinking skills, evaluating the situation around them, determining, should I go there? Should I go here? What's wrong with this picture? What should I be watching out for? Where does the danger lie? Those are the people that are, one, best suited to be able to educate, inform, motivate, and activate the rest of the people within your circle of influence, but also the ones who are not going to be tripping over the pitfalls in the dark. Don't you want to be one of those people? Wouldn't you rather be informed rather than... I mean, we've all heard people on any side of the political fence argue the most inane, insane arguments that don't have any bearing and aren't based on any level of reasoning or logic or credibility or anything. I mean, the whole argument about immigration, a perfect example. They argue about things and they give you reasons that are all based upon purely emotion. Well, this family should be entitled to stay. I get it, but in order to entitle that family to stay, I have to enable 7 million other families to stay, and not all of those families should be here. I'm sorry, you may not agree with that. You may not even like that. But it doesn't change the fact that they violated our border. They don't have a right to come in here and utilize our resources and get you to pay. That's the simple logic of it. They're pressing and putting an enormous amount of pressure from a tiny minority on our government to enable them to have something that you're not entitled to, and for crimini's sake, you came from here. What's wrong with that picture? The idea that you are in a position where you can realistically argue and support your own positions is one of importance. And I cannot express enough how critical the idea of looking at opposing viewpoints is. That's what our founders did. Did you know that, of course, they had no television. They were very, very well read. I mean, they read philosophy, they read political thought, they read political science. They had long and deep discussions. I mean, they didn't have a boob tube, which is probably why they were such brilliant thinkers. But the only weapon you really have, folks, that's worth anything is your mind. That's the one that can't be taken away from you. It can't be turned against you unless you allow it to. I just think critical thinking and the ability to sift through the onslaught, the torrent of media that's fed to you, and to separate that which is fact from fiction, that which is wheat, separating the wheat from the chaff, what's good and what's fodder and what's nonsense is important. You may disagree. If that's the case, you can go back and find, something about, you can go watch CNN and they'll talk about the airplane again. I mean, I don't know what to say. All right, let's tackle this topic, which is tax facts and absurdities. I put a bunch of stuff up on our Facebook page and America's Voice Now about this. Because yesterday was tax day, the media was flooded with all of these, all this information. But for the record, a couple of things that you don't know, which you probably ought to know. And that is that, first of all, 72% of all the tax burden in the United States. Now, we're talking about persons. We're not talking about corporations, right? But we are talking about persons. 72% of the entire federal tax burden is carried by the top 10% of all income earners. Now, I saw kind of an interesting series of interviews that was held the other day by somebody who went out into the street, a man in the street, and had this chart. I think it was on Hannity, if I'm not mistaken, but had this chart which showed that 72% is paid by, and that the bottom 50% only actually pay 2% of the total tax liability burden. And they interviewed these people on the street, showed them this chart, and said, were you aware that 72%, first of all, the first question they asked them was, do you think the wealthy pay their fair share? Now, of course, I'm sure a lot of these, it appeared that a lot of these people that they were interviewing were probably in New York, which means that, $100,000 a year That's not a lot of money in New York. I mean, I don't know where you are in the country, but $100,000 a year these days is really not a lot of money. And, I mean, it's still a good job. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But, you know, for a couple or a family to make $100,000 a year puts them in the top 10%. And quite honestly, that doesn't really go that far. I mean, if you're earning, 60 and your wife's earning 50, boom, you're well into the top 10%. So most of the people that they interviewed, assuming that this was in New York, would, more often than not be earning well over $100,000, right? And it was amazing to me how many people said, no, the rich aren't paying their fair share. Then they showed them this chart and said, well, so for the record, let me show you that 72% of all of the federal income taxes collected from individuals and 72% of the tax burden on America is paid by the top 10% of earners. Well, it was quite interesting to see their change of mind when they saw the numbers in front of them. And that's what I'm talking about when I say critical thinking. See, most people are adopting what they've heard in the media. The rich don't pay their fair share. Well, with all due respect, let me just throw a couple things out there about fair shares. First of all, fair share only really matters when you're talking about fair and reasonable expectations of what we should be paying for. And I'm the first one to tell you, and you don't probably even need me to confirm it for you because you have this opinion yourself, but how much money does the government spend that it shouldn't be spending in the first place? So when you say, who's paying their fair share, I don't have a problem paying a fair share, and I'm sure most of you don't either. But I don't want the money squandered. I don't want the money used for purposes which are against the best interests of, 1, our nation, 2, myself, 3, my state. I don't want that. I don't want my money being used for Common Core. I don't want a Department of Education that has a $100 billion budget. That's $2 billion per state, or a little less if you're President Obama and you live in 57 states. You see, the point is simply this. Most Americans are reasonable people. We really don't have a problem paying government's debts. But what we expect is that government is going to be responsible about how they're harboring and husbanding our resources. And that they're not. So paying your fair share only matters when what they're spending money on is fair. I don't want to fund a study at Harvard University that determines why, I read it the other day, I've forgotten, I think it was ducks, that ducks have a corkscrew-shaped penis. I don't really care. And guess what? If that's really important, Harvard will find the money from someone else to do that study. A private philanthropist. But it shouldn't come from Bob and Cindy or Kelly and Wendy, who were actually just trying to figure out whether or not they should pay the mortgage or the medication bill this month for their kid. I got a problem with that. I've got a problem with the BLM spending $3 million of taxpayer money to go round up cows because they're owed what they claim to be $1 million. At what point in time do you have to look at this and say, well, there's no financial benefit in spending $3 million to collect $1 million? Okay, the point is simply this. 72% of the country covers, 10% of the country covers 72% of all the expenses. The bottom 50% of taxpayers are only paying about 2%. I'm sorry, I apologize. That number is wrong. It's 10%. The bottom 48% pay 10% of the total burden. Now, I want you to just recognize something. Back when the original IRS or the income tax was originally passed, it was like 6% of your income. 6%. I think most Americans would say, I think 6% is very reasonable. I have no problem giving you 6%. But remember that government didn't have these social welfare programs that are, staggering. Truthfully, ladies and gentlemen, if you were to just pay, if everyone who worked, irrespective of whether they made $5,000 or $5 million, paid 6% of our income, guess what? We wouldn't even be able to cover the interest payment on our debt. Hello? What they're doing is they are slowly but surely fleecing us to pay this ever-burgeoning debt, which I have to admit, I don't agree with how most of it is spent. It shouldn't have been spent in Afghanistan. It shouldn't have been spent in Iraq. It shouldn't be spent in a lot of ways. And by the way, I am a very conservative, constitutionally conservative person. I do not agree with the Republican stance that the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq were legitimate. They weren't. So I'm on the side of the liberal progressive on that. Hello? So don't demonize me and call me a warmonger and a baby killer and all that nonsense. I don't think we should have been over there in the first place. We should have never sent our troops there. We had no business there. The truth is, we really have a lot of things that we are probably more in common with than you think, if you're a liberal, if you're a progressive. I don't call myself anything other than a constitutional patriot. I'm not a Republican by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, the Republican Party is made up of traitors. Is every Republican a traitor? No. But anyone who is in elected office that is wearing the Republican moniker is. Oh, I'll get a ton of hate mail over that one. I don't really care. If you don't like this program, you can go out and watch CNN, and they will tell you all about Flight 370 for the 11,373rd time. Or you can watch Bill O'Reilly on Fox News, fakenews.com. And he'll tell you all about how you're a paranoid delusionist if you believe that government is monitoring you. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, the empirical evidence that government is doing that against your best interest is overwhelming. Only if you are comfortably ensconced in your own little bubble could you have the opinion that there's something good about that. By the way, I am a firm believer, along with the progressives, that the NSA and all this surveillance and spying and all that nonsense is bad for America. So, again, we're in agreement. They shouldn't be doing it. The Republicans are the ones who are promoting that. The Republicans are the ones who passed the National Defense Authorization Act that allows an American to be detained indefinitely based on a belligerent act. Excuse me, what exactly is the definition of a belligerent act? Maybe stepping outside of a little fenced area that says First Amendment free speech zone, somewhere in the deserts of Nevada. Yeah. The truth is, I don't really have a problem paying my fair share. I just want the share to be fair. I want the expenditures to be fair. Here's a kind of an interesting article from CNS News. And by the way, if you're not a CNS News subscriber, I encourage you to become one. CNS is in Charlie November Sierra. CNSnews.com. 86 million full-time private sector workers are sustaining 148 million benefit takers. Wow. Buried deep on the website of the U.S. Census Bureau is a number every American citizen, and especially those entrusted with public office, should know. It's 86,429,000. That is the number of Americans who in 2012 got up every morning and went to work in the private sector and did it week after week after week. These are the people who built America, and these are the people who can sustain it as a free country. The liberal media has not been made famous, has not made them famous like the polar bear, but they are truly a threatened species. According to the Census Bureau, approximately 103 million people worked full-time year-round in the United States. A full-time year-round worker is a person who worked quote, 35 hours or more per week, which is considered full-time, and 50 or more weeks during the previous calendar year, year-round. That's the Census Bureau's definition. For school personnel, summer vacation is counted as weeks worked if they are scheduled to return to their job in the fall. So they can throw teachers into that mix. Of the 103 million full-time year-round workers, 16.6 million of them worked for the government. That included 12.6 million who worked for state and local government and 4 million who worked for the federal government. The 86 million Americans who work full-time year-round included 77.3 million employed as wage and salary workers. At first glance, 86,429,000 people might seem like a healthy population of full-time private sector workers. But then you need to look at what they're up against. They are supporting 147 million people who are receiving some sort of 148 million people, who are receiving some sort of benefits. You know, in the Atlas Shrugged book by Ayn Rand, they were called the looters, right? These were the people who basically were recipients of the benefits of the Great Republic, but actually did nothing to participate in it or to generate any of the fodder, the momentum, the forward movement, the energy. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't have a lopsided scenario like that, where 86 million people are paying for the benefits of 148 million other people. It just doesn't work, because those 86 million, I mean, you know, you can only squeeze them so much before they become one of the 148 million. Or they're making so little that it makes no sense to work. I mean, the truth is, you know, it's actually at this stage in the game, it would be, you can almost earn as much money scamming the system and becoming a looter, a benefit taker, than you can actually working for a living. I mean, if you can earn $40,000 a year as a looter, and basically, you know, your work day is made up of figuring out how you can apply for this benefit or that benefit or scam your way through the system. But I mean, that leaves you free for the other 4 days a week, basically, to go out there and play video games or go surfing or ride your bike or, you know, I mean, whatever it is you do. Or work off the books and collect even more. Ladies and gentlemen, the country can't sustain like that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tap on our last topic, which is Ukraine and the Obama foreign policy, and how it is leading us into a very, very dangerous area of the nation. Stick with us. We'll be back in a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm the host here, and you can find us live at americasvoicenow.org. Please make sure that you visit our sponsor at Wits End Classic Barbershop at 417-372-2027. They're located on the square in West Plains. He charges $10 for a haircut. $10, folks. He cuts my hair about once a week, what little I have left. And he also does this hot lather shave thing with, you know, a straight razor and the hot towel and the whole 9 yards. If you've got a husband, Father's Day is coming up, you want to treat your husband or your significant other or your boyfriend or whatever to a nice treat, take them over to Wits End Classic Barbershop in West Plains. And after you're done there, you can slip into Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop in the back room and get them a nice cigar or something, maybe some pipe tobacco. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Segment of the morning. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am the host here. We are looking at some pretty rugged scenarios, folks, in our foreign policy. And it's not just limited to the Middle East anymore, or, some argument we're having with, one of the Middle Eastern countries, or, Africa, Northern or Southern Africa. The world has heated up. And I got to tell you why. The real reason that the world is heated up so extensively is because not only are we in America coming to the realization and the awareness and the awakening that we are under an onslaught of tyranny from our own government, but many, many, many individuals around the world are experiencing the same thing in their nations, and they're rising up over it. When you look at France as an example, it's a socialist nation. They've got this massive, unbelievable tax burden. Greece, same thing, where everyone values their leisure time in a way that Americans don't even comprehend or understand. I mean, in Greece, you retire at 50, you get a full government pension. I did an article, a couple of years ago on the program where in Greece, if you are a convicted pedophile, you actually are entitled to apply for government disability. Yes, and you get more money than someone who's actually disabled from a physical heart attack. I mean, something's wrong with that. Something's wrong with that. In France, the tax burden is so high that Hollande has passed a 75% tax if you make more than $1 million a year. What's the motivation for breaking the $1 million mark if by doing so you're going to actually earn less than a guy who made $700,000? I mean, it's insane. So let's see, I make $1.1 million a year, but I'm going to get taxed at a rate of 75%. So, in fact, let's just call it $1 million for simple round numbers. I'm going to get left with $250,000 a year. A guy who earns $700,000 only gets, let's say, taxed at 50%. So he's going to get to keep $350,000. Duh. Why would anybody want to succeed? Have you ever thought of it that way before? A guy who earns less keeps more. At net, after it's all said and done. What's your motivation to open a business? What's your motivation to earn money? To build wealth? Because you're not building, the only person that's benefiting from your building of wealth is their government. But it's not limited to that. What it is, where our problem lies in the United States is in a scenario where our government is looked at this stage in the game, and the United States is looked at with complete and utter total disrespect by virtually even our allies and our partners. When you look at what's going on in the Ukraine, you may not be hearing it, but they're discussing U.S. boots on the ground. Now, nobody's more weary of war than the United States of America right now, folks. We've just gone through a physical 13-year war in Afghanistan, which we lost. I mean, there's an article out on Drudge this morning, by the way, about how Afghanistan is not actually ready to take over their own government when we pull out. They're not prepared. Karzai is as corrupt as it gets. He's been funneling billions of dollars that the United States has been funneling into him, or supposedly through him into the country, and siphoning it off. Him and his brother are corrupt drug lords. Nothing more. He can wear fancy clothes, but it doesn't make him less of a monster. We're not. They cannot make it. When we pull out of there, it's going to become a failed state, just like Iraq is now. Iraq is a failed state. Iraq is a failed state. They're in a civil war, but you don't hear about it from the mainstream media because they don't want you to know that all the men and women whose lives we lost, U.S. citizens, all the treasure that we expended there was for naught. Didn't accomplish a doggone thing. Putin, who is clearly psychopathic, and I mean that in a clinical sense of the word. Not in the sense that, he's like the guy from, with the knife in the shower and all that. But he's psychopathic in the sense that he is, drawn to power and totalitarianistic power like a magnet. He wants to see Russia restored to its former greatness. Whether you agree with it was former and great is not material here. The point is simply this. We are creating our own enemies. It's a self-perpetuating engine. We've started this war on terror by going into places and assaulting, frankly, just a lot of innocent people. We've pissed them off, and rightly so. Think about it this way. If the United States of America was throwing drone strikes on domestic American cities, how many of you would be preferential to big government then? Wouldn't you say this is the enemy? If it was your brother or cousin who was sitting at home with 5 friends playing a game of poker and having a beer for matchsticks, and Washington threw a drone on them in the middle of Milwaukee, wouldn't you be, hey, you know what? That's enough. That is the position that we have placed ourselves in as a nation, where we have perpetuated our own enemy. The enemy, the boogeyman that we're all taught to fear, is being bred and perpetuated by us. Now, not by you and me, but by these people in government who have to keep the war machine alive to keep the money wheels moving. Meanwhile, we're spending so much time and money and effort and energy monitoring and building up to go to war against our own nation. It's inconceivable to me. It's no wonder that Putin is laughing at us. He's sitting here saying, this country, they go out there and they pitch to the world. They put on this facade like a Western, in a cheap Western town where you've got this magnificent, glorious front on the building, so that it looks magnificent from the street. You're looking at it, you're like, wow, look at this. But then, you walk around the side, and there's nothing in the back of it but a tent attached to it, a canvas tent. That's what our republic has become. We're no longer a country that's ruled by law. There's no rule of law here anymore. Do you think a guy like Putin, who understands the inner workings of the highest levels of government power and tyrannical power at that, doesn't look and see what Obama and the administrative agencies, the three-letter alphabet, that the courts are corrupt, that our Congress is a joke? You think he doesn't see that? He sees that even better than you do. You know why? Because he understands, and he's in a position of political authority and power. He's used to the trappings of it. He can see, that it's all a sham. Look, if you're an electrical engineer and, you walk into a place where they profess to be electrical engineers, and you walk in there and you see that they put the wrong kind of wire on, you know that the guy's a shammer. He's not a real electrical engineer because no real electrical engineer would do the job like that. The only way that you know is because you have inside knowledge of electrical engineering. I could walk in and look at it and say, looks fine to me. What do I know? Putin is an electrical engineer, and he's looking at the wiring that Obama and our Congress have put together, and he's like, these guys are pitching themselves as experts? You're kidding me. they're doing the same thing they're accusing me of. They're forcing big government, this massive Orwellian titan, to be the beginning and end all of every aspect of life, cradle to grave. That's their goal. They're following the planks that my ancestors, other Russians, laid down and put together to make communism a reality. They've instituted universal health care. They've instituted government-sponsored education. They've put in place a progressive tax rate. They monitor and surveil their own citizens. I mean, folks, that's the equivalent of making a pot of stew and putting in meat and potatoes and carrots and water, right? You've got all the makings of a stew. All the ingredients are there. There's no doubt you're making a stew. There's no doubt in Vladimir Putin's mind that America is making the stew of tyranny because he gets it. He understands it. He knows exactly what ingredients you should use because he's been making stew all his life. And when he sees a nation arming itself, not for a defensive posture against an enemy abroad, not for a defensive posture of defending its own borders, because we don't do that either. But when he sees a nation arming himself, and trust me, if you think we've got intelligence on what Russia is doing and China is doing, come on. You don't think they have that same level of intelligence against us? You don't think they have Russians who live in the United States and just observe and send back information? Because we have this open society. They don't even have to look. They don't even have to be investigative journalists. Folks, you have to realize what is happening around us. Our government has put together all the ingredients and put it into a pot. And all of those ingredients can only make one thing, a stew. And it's the stew of tyranny. And Putin is looking at us and saying, not only is this guy doing exactly what he's accusing me of, but he's inept and he's incompetent and he's impotent at it. He's a bungler. Now, let's take it another step. Let's take it a little further south. China. China, another totalitarian nation, another communist regime, is looking at the United States and they're saying, appears as an experienced chef, it appears they're making stew. And their chef, while it's clear he's making stew, he's a very poor cook. There's weakness there. And in the battle for the chefs, we think we can whoop them. You see, Putin and Russia and China look at us like a resource waiting to be tapped. And I'm going to tell you when that's going to happen. When the United States of America is embroiled in a fiscal collapse that is not, I mean, look, there's no economist out there right now who's got any level of credibility and is intellectually honest that will deny that we are in massive fiscal trouble and that some sort of collapse is destined to happen. Not a question of how deep or when, but or if, but when, right? No one. None of them. So if that is the case, and there does occur this collapse, fiscal collapse, they know, having lived in these scenarios where they have uprisings of their people from time to time based upon their own repressive activities, that the American people are going to rise up against their own government. By necessity. And that is exactly the wedge, the hole, the chink in the armor they're looking for. There are a lot of risks to what we're doing right now, not the least of which is that in the event that America ever gets to a point where our own government becomes in open warfare against the American citizens, and I mean, you don't have to look far to see how close we are to the explosion of the powder keg, right? I gave you the analogy yesterday that, we're standing in a powder room full of gunpowder barrels, and a lot of it spilled all over the floor. And everybody's smoking. And one guy drops the cigarette and says, "Uh-oh," and the camera watches the cigarette in slow motion. Tip, 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 tip. We're waiting for it to land. And we can see from the camera angle that it's about to fall in a nice, juicy mound of powder. That's why America has a pall hanging over it, a black cloud. That's why Americans are... I was talking to a fella yesterday, and he brought something out to me. He said, I went through a university parking lot the other day, and I don't remember that being the college experience I had. I drove through there, and everybody had a frown. There was no happy faces. There were no smiling people. When I went to college, it was a bunch of people with smiles on their faces. They were happy to be there. They were looking forward to life. He's right. That's not the experience most of our youth have today. They're self-absorbed, or they're not smiling because they're too busy typing in on their NSA personal tracking device. And they're not even typing in something meaningful. They're typing in something to find out what somebody else's life is like. Because they're so flippin' boring. You see, at some point, folks, this is going to come to a screeching halt. And I'm warning you right now that the foreign policy that we've been engendering around the planet and the enemy list that we've been building around the planet, and in large part with good cause, it's going to come back and bite us. Because not only are we going to be contending against our own government, if we're successful in resistance against tyranny, government-sponsored, terrorism and tyranny against the American people, and we are effectively able to push it off, guess what? They will bring in reinforcements from our past enemies. China, Russia, the United Nations, the European socialists. Because rather than give up power, they'll do anything to retain it, including the scorched earth principle of, if I can't have it, nobody's getting it. And I don't care if I got to burn the whole thing to the ground. That's the mentality they've got. If I can't maintain and control of the United States of America and my power, I'll burn it to the ground. I'll bring in yesterday who was my paper enemy, and I'll make them my ally. And they'll help me win my country. The price, of course, will be they're not really in power, even if they are successful. And we'll be all speaking Mandarin in 50 years. The days of the Western dominance of the world are receding. They have reached their pinnacle. And they've reached their pinnacle because of power mongers and psychopaths. Not just President Barack Obama. This was the Bush before him, the Clinton before him, the Bush before him, the Reagan before him. No, Reagan's not exempt. Don't fool yourself. This goes back to the late 1800s, folks. Maybe even earlier. Maybe since the days of Lincoln. I mean, what was the 14th Amendment, really? And where is the 13th Amendment that we originally had? The original 13th Amendment. The one that said anyone who takes an official title is bereft of their citizenship and expelled from the country, labeled dishonorably discharged. Where's that? Why was that taken out? Why was the 14th Amendment not actually signed by the president himself? Don't believe me? Don't trust my word for it? Okay. You can listen to Tom after my program on Patriot FB, or you can go out and do your own homework. I just gave you the real the linchpin, the hinge pin that is the crux of our problems from the Civil War forward. The truth is, our government abhors that which we stand for, that which they profess outwardly to support, that which they espouse. And they only want to see it applied when they can control it. And so, that which they allegedly base their elections on is that which, the moment that they're elected, they are scheming, conniving, and figuring out a way to circumvent. Doesn't take them long once they get into office. A lot of the Tea Party folks who were elected back in 2010 have, for all intents and purposes, just become Republicans again. They separated from the Republican Party because they were sick of it. Then they were brought back into the fold because, well, it was just coercion and convenience. They don't represent their constituencies on Capitol Hill. The truth is, our foreign policy is a clear and exigent danger to the Republic of the United States of America. And that's the truth. Our foreign policy is, and our weakness is going to be the death of America if we are not careful. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. You can write me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. Try to respond to every email unless it's a chain mail. Please don't put me on your chain mail list. I don't want them. If you can support us in any way, we have a a PayPal link on our Facebook page. Please help us if you can. We are. This is self-funded by me and those few people who actually do donate. And for that, I am forever grateful to those of you who know who you are. But you can help out. You can make a PayPal donation, or you can mail us a quick payment if you want to use money order or a check, and you can send that to America's Voice Now at P.O. Box 1195, West Plains, Missouri 65775. You can also find us on our listen line, where you can listen toll-free, or not toll-free, but you can listen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 415-325-0725. You all have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Folks, if you are listening to us on Big Country 99, please make sure that you patronize our sponsors. There's a couple out there you need to know about. One is Pizza Hut, and today is a great day for you to swing by Pizza Hut here in West Plains if you're going to be down in this area. They are staunch supporters of America's Voice Now, and I encourage you strongly to make sure that you patronize that location on Porter Wagoner Boulevard in West Plains. Tuesdays and Thursdays are reduced lunch days. There's $5 for lunch. And then on Tuesday evening, it's kids under 12 eat free for family night. And they have a pizza bar and a pasta bar and a salad bar, and it's delicious. So participate in that. Make sure that you swing by and see our friends over at Battery Station. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. You can also reach them via telephone at 417-257-7799. They carry products and stuff that will just blow your mind. I mean, it's not just a battery store. They've got all kinds of gear for bug-out bags. They've got all kinds of gear if you're a prepper. They have freeze-dried food. They've got ammunition. They've got bags and all kinds of little tools and gadgets you need. They've got assorted knives in there. They've got optics and all kinds of things, accessories and parts for everything that you could need. Make sure that you give them a call. If you're going to drive down and talk to them, or you're looking for a specific kind of ammunition, give them a call at 417-257-7799, and they'll tell you what they have in stock. All right. You all have a great day. Thanks very much for listening to America's Voice Now. If you'd like to reach me directly, you can at Mike at americasvoicenow.org. If you want to catch our listen line, where you can listen to the show every day at your leisure, that number is 415-325-0725.